Yeah, hi, Ivan. I think we can start. I think they would be a bit late, so when they join in, then we can they can start yeah, continue from there. So, Ivan, over to you.
Okay. Ivan, Benedicta, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, can hear you.
Yeah,
Okay. Ivan, can I start then?
please, 1 more minute.
No problem.
Hello, Ivan.
Hello, good morning. Hello.
Good morning. Good morning.
Yeah,
Can you hear
just
me
said,
okay?
yeah, we can hear you.
Beautiful. I can hear
Yeah,
you loud and
great.
clear.
Oh, that's great. So, can you proceed?
Absolutely.
Oh, beautiful.
All right. All right. Bonjour, je m'appelle Dr. Joël Thomas. I'm so glad you could join me today. And I'm so excited to be here presenting on crisis mapping, teaching high school ELL students, how to make maps that save lives. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to ask them at any time in the chat. And at the end of the presentation, I'll answer them. If you need more information, the answer is not clear, we can elaborate further. Be my pleasure. All right, so let's get started today's agenda. I'll be going briefly through the introduction. We'll be going through the procedure and methodology, the results and discussion conclusion, and then I'll answer any questions that you might have. Before we begin, I'd like to start with a quote from our former president, John F. Kennedy, who said that the Chinese use two brushstrokes to write the word crisis. One brushstroke stands for danger, and the other for opportunity. In a crisis, be aware of the danger, but also recognize the opportunity. And so, why teach crisis mapping to students in China? Why now? Well, if we look at a report from the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, we can clearly see that never before has crisis mapping been more relevant. The recorded disasters and economic losses have almost doubled in the last 20 years, and the number of people affected has risen almost by 1 billion. And just to see it in another another way, you can look at this graph from NOAA. And here you can see we have record-breaking numbers of people being affected and billions of dollars in economic loss due to the increasing frequency of severe weather events and the severity of these severe weather events. So how do we teach crisis mapping effectively, especially to students who might not even know English or didn't know that creating a map was even possible? Well, the Mapathon, if you've worked with the humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, is one of the best ways and most engaging and fun ways to make maps, especially collaboratively with other people from around the world. So I decided to shrink that because of the constraints of time and also due to some of the other constraints that we'll go into a little bit later in the procedure and methodology, into basically a mini-mapathon. And in order to make that mini-mapathon meaningful, we wanted to teach students that they can crisis map in order to save lives, that they can also experience a real-world educational and volunteering experience that meets their service learning requirements. So in order to graduate high school, some high schools require students to volunteer a certain number of hours. And the same goes for certain colleges and universities. So this is a perfect way that most people haven't even heard of yet to meet those service learning requirements and to bring people together to make maps in order to save lives and shorten that emergency response time. And the last is to enhance students' human geography knowledge and skills, because we're making maps after all. Basically, if we look here at the research questions driving the instructional design, I designed and developed the Mini-Mapathon curriculum to answer the three key research questions below. The first one was, how did the design support changes in students' perceptions of their crisis mapping knowledge and skills? How did participating in the Mini-Mapathon support student expressed interest in crisis mapping in the future? So we're looking at mapathons maybe in their university or future college, youth mapping programs, youth mapper programs, and perhaps even starting a Maptivist chapter in their high school. And the last part was, how did the Mini-Mapathon support students in engaging crisis mapping? So what did we do? Well, we actually launched 3 pilot programs with 75 fourth grade Asian students after the students learned about crises in their IB PYP curriculum. And how I taught that was kind of last minute, very random. I was developing it for the high school level. And one of the teachers told me that they're studying crises in 4th grade. So I thought, let's do something about it. Would they be interested in doing a hands-on project? I had just done a literature review and discovered a paper about 10-year-old students mapping the world and got really inspired by this Mini-Mapathon. I've been working with Kennedy Jomokela after Mapathons, who really helped me understand the intricacies and how amazing the platform is and the different things you can do, and then how to simplify the instructions for students who don't know the language, for other issues that we might have, such as censorship and connectivity issues, because we're in China after all, and then also how we can get the user account started because of the shortage in time, only 45-minute classes. And so we piloted three programs for 75 students with 4th grade in the 4th grade area. So after learning about crises, they were actually able to do something, be part of the solution. And so we took them on a virtual field trip to Chad, Africa through the UNHCR. They were able to experience and see how the UNHCR is helping refugees in Chad. And then we found a project for the UNHCR on hotosm.org, and we were able to basically take that experience, seeing that problem, and then again creating accounts, learning how to build, how to map houses and how to map roads and be part of the solution. And it went really well. The students responded really well. I was able to make some revisions and then was able to launch 3 mini-mapathons to 28 junior high school students at the International High School, which is connected to the primary school there. And through the mini-mapathon on the high school level, I took the students to Nigeria again and took them to Zimbabwe through the eyes of the Spanish Red Cross and also through Doctors Without Borders. So watching 2 videos showcasing their work, showcasing what kind of relief they're providing, taking them to the ground there to see that level, and then exploring further through satellite imagery from an astronaut's perspective, all the way back down to that humanitarian perspective through the Red Cross and through the Doctors Without Borders kind of lens, and then through, of course, How2SM being able to map the buildings and the roads that weren't mapped before. Moving on to our procedure and methodology section, I took an ADDIE approach, which was basically to analyze, design, develop, implement, and then evaluate the Mini-Mapathon. And so I had about several constraints going into this because, of course, time, I only had about 45 minutes of class time. So how can you take a 3-hour mapathon and shrink it and teach effectively how to map, especially with students who don't know English, especially when we have internet connectivity issues and internet censorship here, and also having to start accounts and things of that nature. So we really focused on what is the learning outcomes that we want to experience. We started with that first, and after hopping into Zimbabwe mapathons, Sierra Leone mapathons, and doing an El Salvador map-along, I decided that a mini-mapathon would be the best if we're able to, again, co-create interactive open street maps using geospatial software, analyze the role maps play in crisis response. So really focusing on who are the stakeholders, such as citizens, who are the humanitarian organizations that benefit, like UNHCR, Doctors Without Borders, Red Cross, NGOs, government agencies, and even military branches. And then also, how can we develop geographical knowledge and spatial awareness? So if you're a teacher, you have to have those learning objectives, those learning outcomes. So these are basically what was measured here through our applied hands-on experiential learning project. Okay, so moving on here, just to give you an idea of what we actually did. So down on the technical level, you can see here, and I worked with the teachers in the other rooms and with an aide. When I was teaching my 3 human geography classes, it was just me and the students. And so after creating accounts for them, and some of the students were able to create accounts by themselves, but I created anonymous accounts for them, got them essentially logged in the day before, and then also launched the pre-survey and told them that we're going to actually be making maps for UNHCR, for Médecins Sans Frontières, and for the Red Cross the next day. And they were kind of like, just to get their curiosity going. So that was a 10-minute exit ticket, or basically using the last 10 minutes of class just to make sure that they are able to log in, they're ready for the next day, and then also that we could launch our pre-surveys and collect the data to analyze for some of the results and findings I'll share in the future. And then during the actual Mini-Mapathon, when they came into the room, we watched the video, as I said, both focusing on the problem, taking them to the actual place, seeing the eyes of the people who are suffering. Here in China, things are pretty good, especially in Beijing. And when I taught this, it was during the time of COVID, so it was a pretty tough time. We missed a lot of students. That's why my sample size is only 28 for the high school junior level. A lot of them were out due to COVID, or also because of working on their college or university applications. So after, again, watching that problem video, taking them to the place, I took one strong student and had them model, just following my coaching, the 4-step process on how to map a building. Now you can see my 4-step process here. I just built a tutorial and just tried to simplify the language, simplify the instructions for this group of ELL students. We reviewed the 4-step process by coaching the student verbally through how to map the building. So we did it, and then we reviewed. I asked the students, what did he do first? What did he do second? What did he do third and fourth? And then I actually took the wheel and made some mistakes and asked them to fix my mistakes. So again, not hitting that control or command Z button, and forgetting to click building. Some of the common mistakes that you see people experience usually during that training session prior to actually going into the Mapathon. And then I answered any questions the students might have. And then we asked the student to start mapping their first building and raise their hands before saving or uploading their first project, so we could just do a quick evaluation and validate basically the quality before it gets validated on the How2SM level, because we didn't want to be uploading a whole bunch of problems. So making sure that they're mapping well and making sure that their questions get answered. So if we take a look here, at the survey responses. So they were analyzed via mixed methods, so qualitative and quantitative. And this is just one table showing what do we need to know. So taking those research questions that I mentioned earlier, how did the design support changes in students' perceptions of their crisis mapping knowledge and skills? How did the Mini-Mapathon support their expressed interest in the future? And how did the Mini-Mapathon support students in engaging in crisis mapping? And then what kind of data will we use? Well, we used pre and post qualitative and quantitative surveys. Here we used quantitative surveys, and then the analysis plans, which you'll be seeing. So basically, what is it going to look like on the back end, and what is it going to look like on the survey? And then if we take a look here, a little bit more in-depth view of kind of behind the scenes, the research questions mapped to the pre and post survey questions here. And I'll be going into that here in just a moment, so you can see the results. So if we get into the data here and go into a deep dive here of the results, and feel free to ask any questions again. The first research question I had was, how did the design support changes in students' perceptions of increasing their crisis mapping knowledge and skills? And to answer that question, it was on post-survey question 5. How would you rate your digital map making skills? And you can see here that we had 36% of them say it was average, above average, 25%, 11% were excellent. So if we take a look again here at the mean values, the pre-survey question 3 and the post-survey, I know this is how students rated their own skills. You can see that there was a large increase there in their perceived mapping of knowledge and skills. So definitely an increased confidence there. And you can see that the ELL students did effectively increase their geospatial knowledge and skills following this experiential learning map making construction of a map. And so let's take a look here at some more data. One of the things that I found interesting, even friends here, when I tell them what crisis mapping is, they've never heard of it, and that I have a presentation in Africa, they say, you know, what is crisis mapping, and what didn't you know before? And again, most people really don't know that maps can be created. So 32% didn't know of the students didn't know that they can create their own maps. In China, they have a app called Baidu, and so the government does most of the work. Now in my country, you know, coming from the US, Google drives cars around, uses satellite imagery because of course they can make a profit by selling advertising and getting people to use their apps and can drive ad revenue through it. But in many developing countries, they don't have the resources or connectivity for that issue and maybe Google doesn't perceive the profit value as large enough to drive cars around. And so a lot of people don't know that they also have access to satellite imagery. Most people had no idea that you can actually hop on and use satellite imagery, see the world via the eyes of an astronaut, and start to actually use Hot OSM's software to draw buildings, to draw maps, and to actually collaborate on that at the same time. So here you can see that 43% had no idea you could collaborate and make a map together, a digital map. 32% didn't know that you could create a map. 21% didn't know that UNHCR, Doctors Without Borders, Red Cross needed our help. And 4% didn't know that maps, are never finished work because there's always new buildings being demolished and new roads being built. So always a need to make sure they're updated. And so I got to share with them. A lot of them are into using drones for fun, for making videos and things like that. And I was telling them if they don't have satellite imagery, there are places in places like Zambia where people are being taught how to fly drones to take pictures of the terrain so that we can actually create accurate maps. And they thought that was pretty cool as well. So just different ways, different applications, and different ideas that they, again, getting a global perspective they didn't have before. Here you can see how would you describe a mapathon in one word to someone who doesn't know anything about it. You can see the positivity here with the word choice. Now this was an open-ended question and most students said it was outstanding. A lot of them said it was good, it was interesting. You can see some of this clearly. Of course, you can see maybe some of the students are a little bit lower level ELL students. Pretty, some of those types of words, but most again expressed that it was a positive experience, and the word that popped out the most was outstanding. So under research question 2, how did participating in the Mini-Mapathon support students express interest in crisis mapping in the future? And again, we're going to post survey question 7. What's the likelihood that you would participate in another Mapathon in the future? So this was just a Mini-Mapathon. This was just an opportunity for them to experience it. I did have another open it up for students who weren't in my human geography class because they heard that I was making maps and they were interested. And so I did open up an opportunity for them to meet their service learning requirements, and just had a Mini-Mapathon night, and students were able to come in and learn more about it in case they wanted to do it in the future, meet those service learning requirements. And just to have that experience to take with them, maybe to join Hot OSM on their own. If we were, again, the school got closed from COVID and they were bored using the internet at home, maybe they wanted to do something positive, feel like they can make a real difference in the world. This is a perfect way to do that, or meet those service learning requirements. And then leadership opportunities like creating their own Maptivist chapter or joining a youth mapper program in the future. And so this question here, you can see that 36% said that they were very likely to participate in another Mapathon in the future. 14% said very likely. 4% said, we didn't have the data due to them being missing. So some of the students were absent. So only 14% said that they were unlikely to do something like this in the future. What's the likelihood that you would participate or start a youth mapper club at your high school, college, or university in the future? So here we had 25% said that they would be interested in doing something like that, and 18% said very likely. So again, those are pretty good numbers in terms of the response. Still a couple students here on the fence, but students clearly express interest in leadership opportunities as well. So this was about 1.5 years ago. So a lot of those students now are in college or university. So I'm interested to know if maybe there are some new youth mapper chapters opened up due to the experience they had here. Research question 3. So how did the Mini-Mapathon support students in engaging crisis mapping? The question here that we used to answer that question was pre-survey question 6. Have you ever created a map before? And here you can see that 54% of the students had not created a map. So this was a completely new experience for 15 students. And again, that really showed that obviously it was engaging because they were actually able to create a map. All 28 students did contribute to the map making that we did in Zimbabwe, as well as in Nigeria. And so I think this was a pretty powerful experience for them here, given that more than half never created a map before. In conclusion, I just wanted to really point out, crisis mapping teaches students that they can change the world. So this is, when we get down to education, a lot of the people really want to maybe teach content or something, but a lot of students, at a young age, knowing that you can change the world and be part of something much bigger than yourself is really inspiring, especially during a time like COVID, when people are suffering from depression and cabin fever, not able to go out, socialize, see their friends, go out to restaurants. So this was a really great time to bring crisis mapping to them and bring this experience to them. It was also a good time for them as they were thinking about their college or university, and some of them actually included this on their applications and asked me to write letters of recommendation, and I talked about their experience crisis mapping. And so to differentiate themselves from competition, because as you know, Harvard had created a course on humanitarian crisis mapping, and so there's a lot of universities. George Mason as well has courses that focus on crisis mapping on the university level, and so students being able to experience that type of educational opportunity at a high school level, and then be able to connect that to that university, it might allow them maybe to beat the competition and get selected to go to their university of their dreams. And they also got to learn about new opportunities such as scholarships, internships with hotosm.org, leadership opportunities to start their Maptivist chapters or youth mapper chapters in their future college or university. And then as we discussed, innovative ways to meet the high school or college service learning requirements, which are very difficult to meet volunteering if you can't go out due to COVID and you can't do anything face to face. This is probably the perfect solution when you have to meet those requirements. So the timing was pretty ideal. Overall, through participating in this crisis mapping activity, in terms of outcomes, students did demonstrate improved mapping skills, increased geospatial knowledge, and many indicated that they would be interested in participating in crisis mapping events in the future. And because of the positivity and the support, I created an educational website, crisismappingweebly.com, for teachers like myself to use and basically just take an event, kind of ship it in a box, to simplify the instructions and maybe have a mini-mapathon at their respective high school or maybe even primary school, and maybe informal learning environments as well, like different clubs or like a Big Brother, Big Sister program, something like that. And so this is just a brief overview. You can go to the website, check it out for yourself. It's very simple. Just focus on how does crisis mapping work. Shows the different applications, a lot of applications from humanitarian OpenStreetMap, of course, and a little history of crisis mapping. So how it was started kind of by a volunteer in a dorm room at Tufts University, and later got discovered by FEMA, and later the Marines and Red Cross used it to go into Haiti. And also just some tutorials that I created, very simple, that I used in both the fourth grade, at the fourth grade level, and then at the high school level. That can of course be used from the fourth grade level all the way through the university educational space. And here just some pictures kind of showing my journey here back into the humanitarian sector. I've always been doing different things, both domestically and abroad. But for me, this crisis mapping, I saw the potential all the way back in 2011 when I was teaching in Japan and working with the United Nations, and we as an intern, and we had the tsunami, earthquake, and Fukushima disaster, and so we created an opportunity to go up and volunteer with an NGO to rebuild houses. And you can see on the bottom there a picture of me and some other volunteers and a professor. And we had a really great time participating in the Sendai framework, which I had no idea would later change the whole perspective and shift from disaster response and humanitarian assistance to disaster risk reduction. So everyone became focused on the economic loss, economic costs. Cities now are planning smarter. Indonesia is moving their capital as a result of not being able to continue to pay for the economic loss due to floods and due to rainfall there. And then, of course, meeting an astronaut and keeping that global perspective at the John F. Kennedy Space Center and seeing a couple rocket launches down there. So really, it's a beautiful experience because the students get to zoom in and see the world from space, see it from an astronaut, and then also get to see that humanitarian assistance and be part of that on the ground. And then here are some of the references I have for you. And at this point, I'd like to open it up to any questions that you might have, or any ideas that you have for ways that we can maybe possibly collaborate in the future.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Thomas Joel, for your presentation. I think this is a very good start for our academic track committee of the State of the Map Africa Conference. And this is a kind of presentation we would like to be receiving in our subsequent track conference for the academic track. I don't know, is there anyone that has questions for Dr. Thomas before we switch over? Any question?
Yeah, I don't have a question, but a compliment. I just want to say thank you for the great work you've done, and teaching the kids. We hope to see more of this Yeah, in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to see more of it too, not just from me, but from other teachers, because most people don't know that they can create a map and that they can really do a pretty good job in even 45 minutes, despite maybe the constraints. Being able to do this, see the kids' faces light up. It's really really positive, especially when you count the number of roads and you count the number or sorry, of buildings and the kilometers of roads, and you can see the impact and how much you've mapped together. When they see those those tiles start changing colors on the map, and you can see that how much you're mapping and that progress, it's really powerful, and you really start to build momentum, and the students start to even compete a little bit, which is really really fun to watch. Some of the students get really into it, and a lot of the students that I asked, did you do this at home? And a lot of them said that they had. Fourth graders went home, talked to their parents about it, started doing it at home, and high school students as well. So I know this has happened in other places in the world, and I was really inspired by, again, Kennedy Jumukela, my personal experiences, and then also that Mini-Mapathon. There was only one publication that I saw where they had done a Mini-Mapathon and shrunk it and brought it to students, I think, in Italy. And so that really kind of inspired me to try this out, and talking with Jeffrey and talking with Kennedy, and then having support from the other teachers, and just giving it a go, and then seeing the results, the survey results, and seeing seeing those tiles change really gave us hope. And so that's why I created the Weebly, to hopefully just create an exportable Mini-Mapathon experience and activity to take them to Hatasm, and hopefully participate and see the world through the humanitarian open street mapping software.
So thank you.
Hello, this is
Hello.
Janan from Uganda.
How are you, Jan?
Yes, and I really appreciate the work done, and this is an achievement, and I see it as a privilege. For example, in let's say secondary schools, tertiary schools, this will be a great opportunity for them. And in case if someone from such institutions have this idea of getting this knowledge, hands-on practicals, it will be of a good advantage. For example, if someone comes from the high school and meets chapters like youth mappers in universities, whereby it didn't know anything about it, about how to map, and if he had the opportunity to have such during his or her high school levels, it will be of a good help in recruiting them, so that at least the chapters can grow. So I'm seeing it in that way, so that if there is a leadership whereby they have to go on, but they have to select other people to sit in those positions. But if someone has knowledge on how OpenStreetMap works, it will be of a good help to move on with the cause than training someone from scratch. It can limit on resources, whereby someone to train someone who doesn't know than training someone who already has an idea. It brings in a good idea, and someone can catch up and move on smoothly. So I see it in that way, and I really congratulate for this achievement, and